Hi, everyone. You're listening to ToRAISE Questions Doula podcast, and this is Thérèse Hakoun. I'm Executive Director of To Labor. We are an international birth doula training and certification program. We're going to continue this week our conversation with Jodi Brown, Dr. Jodi Brown, that we began last week. She is a physician up in Vermont who began her journey as a doula into becoming an obstetrician. So we want to thank Latch Mama once again for supporting us, and please check out their website, latchmama.com, and please check out our website, tolabor.com, for further information about our program and about our trainings, and check out our calendar for updated listings at all times. We'll be back with part 2 in just a moment. Thanks. So you got through the residency, and of course I'm skipping over that you're also a gynecologist as well, which is a whole nother field of care. And even though they're integrated, they can be so separate as well. Do you like one more than the other?
Oh, I love them both so equally.
Do you?
It's hard to pick and choose. And
yeah.
I do love doing surgery, which is a surprise to me. I didn't think that I would ever be the type of person that would love to operate on people, and I am still, very conservative about those numbers, and I never push surgery on anybody because I think less intervention the better overall. But when I do get to operate, I do love it. I love working with my hands, and I love making things, look nice and pretty at the end.
That's nice. That's nice. Nice and pretty and healthy.
Yeah.
And so when you finished your residency, which I can imagine 4 years must have been just like, well, now maybe a blur, but then must have been so intense every moment. It's like being a parent, huh? You think it'll never end, and then all of a sudden she's 13 months old, and it's like, you got to be kidding. I didn't think I'd get through those first few days. And then your decision to leave the area, what went into your decision to move to Vermont and choose the practice that you're in?
Sure. I mean, most of it is purely location, is that we wanted to move back to New England. We're both from the New England area, and it just felt more like home. And Delaware was as wonderful 4 years as it was for us. It never felt like a really viable place for us to settle down. And then it just became part of, where can we find jobs? And strange enough, I found out about the job that I currently have now from a medical student who was interviewing for residency at my program, who I just happened to mention that I was in the job search and that I would love to move to Vermont. She's like, funny enough, I just did this rotation at this great office, and you're, eventually I would love to join a practice like that, or that practice specifically, and turns out they're hiring. And so she gave me the name and the contact information for the office manager, and then it just happened to work out. And it can be a nerve-wracking process when you are going from one institution to another, because when you work in one hospital and you train in a hospital and you've been there for 4 years, you know who the personalities are. You know the people that you want to call in at 3 a.m. for help. You know who to refer people to. And so when you are joining a new practice, they are all unknowns. It's hard to know the practice styles of the people who you will be joining with, who you will ultimately be sharing patients with, and asking those those providers to care for your patients in your absence. And so it really takes a lot of trust and faith in the people who you're practicing with to do your patient's due diligence.
Yeah.
And I still don't know how you vet those people out. Part of it is I really think is talking with the nursing staff, because the nurses know. They know everything, and they have no hesitations about giving it up on, whether or not they like the providers that they're working with or if they don't.
Nurses at the hospitals, you mean? Or nurses in the actual office? Both?
Either. Any nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Any
right.
nurse.
Right.
They know what the real story is. And there were several places that I interviewed that they left me alone with the nurses, and I asked them frank questions, and the answers I got were less than reassuring. And I had an opportunity to sit down with a group of labor and delivery nurses here, and they had nothing but glowing and wonderful things to say about the providers, which was really reassuring. And then when I came and started practicing, I really found my group. And I feel so lucky to have found a group of amazing women who practice similarly, who really believe in birth, who support low intervention birth. We have the lowest C-section rate in the state of Vermont.
Wow.
And we are all extremely proud of that.
And what is that, the rate for your practice?
I can't remember what it is for 2016, but I remember from 2015, I believe it was 16%.
Wow.
Our primary C-section rate was 9%, and I think our C-section for an arrest, so arrest to dilation, arrest of descent was like 2%.
Wow, that's
so
great.
So they were all like indicated for non-reassuring fetal status or breech presentation or something of that ilk.
And what about VBACs?
Oh, we love VBACs. We support them. I think in 2015 we had a 100% VBAC rate.
Wow.
Of everybody who attempted had a successful VBAC.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
Or for 16, yeah.
Wow. And then, so, because that is one of the big concerns, as I'm sure you know, for so many people who are choosing their care provider, is the numbers of people who, providers who are in practice with each other, and in some cases just literally in business with each other, is really scary to people. And one of the big questions is, well, there's 8 doctors in this practice, and I know the likelihood of me having the one that I really like is 1 out of 8, that I will get them. And I don't know if Dr. Schmo agrees with Dr. So, and how hard that is. So to find a practice where there is going to be, it sounds to me, collaborative care between the care providers to provide the best and consistent care is just lovely. I mean, way to go for you, for your co-workers, but for the people that you're serving as well. And then you have 2 midwives, you said, in the practice as well.
Yes, and so when I first started, the midwives had their own separate independent practice. And then because of hospital finances and whatnot, there was actually they wanted us to combine practices, which was something that had been raised, I think, multiple times prior to my arrival here. But I do recall, one of the questions that I asked when I was interviewing for jobs was, do you work with midwives, and what is your relationship with midwives? And this was the only place that I interviewed that had a functional relationship with the nurse midwives, because at that time when I was just interviewing, they were 2 separate practices, and so the midwives used our physician group as a backup for them. And the nurse midwives were involved in my interview process. I got to meet them when I was interviewing with the physicians, which I think spoke volumes about that. And the fact they were so open and honest about kind of their collaborative relationship, and that it really did work, and I think was very telling.
Yeah.
And then I come to find out that they also, the group is, way before I arrived, but was very well respected in the home birth community as well. And so often patients that need to be transferred from home birth care will come to our hospital, which is great. And we have a good working relationship with one specific midwife who works in town, but I think there's a few others that are north that are also around as well.
That's great. And so do you have input, Jodi, without putting you on too much on the spot? Like, since so many of our listeners are doulas, for doulas on how, I mean, you must have worked with doulas through the years of residency and maybe perhaps now in this practice. Have you had experience with working with doulas as a primary care provider?
I have, yes. There was limited exposure in residency, and that part of that was just the function of the folks that I was taking care of, which were low income, government insurance people who didn't have a lot of extra resources for doula care, unfortunately. But there were some occasionally, but more so here, and that's something that our hospital really does support. And it's been great to see doulas in the birth room and to be a part of the team. And so I think having a doula provider as continuous support, I feel like ultimately it makes everybody's job easier.
Yeah.
To have someone who can just be there for mamas and for the family to help, as long as it's a collaborative kind of part of the team. I think it can get tricky when there is, I think, contention. And, I haven't really seen it a whole lot here, but I have heard of it happening, and I think it just has to do with the dynamics of whatever birth facility that people are laboring, and how welcome or not welcome they are to the presence of a doula in the birth room.
Yeah, I think this is the big challenge for doulas, is they always want to be welcomed. And, we really talk about leaving your ego outside the door and really being present for the person who has hired you, and helping them find their own voice. And I would like to believe the overwhelming majority of people that we've had the honor of training really hold true to that. I know that we can't go into a room with everyone and see how they are. We're not for combative behavior, but I think it's a big struggle for doulas to walk that line of wanting to help be that advocate for their client and being respectful of the care provider and the facility and those who work in it, yet wanting it all to be wonderful. And sometimes it's not the doula's fault, it's the attitude that's coming to them, and sometimes it's the doula's fault because of the attitude that she's got coming towards the others. And I know, I would think any doula who had the opportunity to work with you would just be in heaven, because it'd be like, oh, here we are, as long as they were being respectful to the whole process. And I think, do you have any input or any say into that?
I think it comes down to, everyone wants to be heard. No one wants to be undermined.
Right.
And I think even in, the practice that we have, where we're very open, we're very supportive, we still have gotten, I think some folks who have encountered, people who want to consult with their doula about, a suggestion that we're making before they make that decision. And sometimes that has to, it stings a little bit ego. You don't want to be like, oh, you don't believe me, you need to ask other people. But that's just ego, and, but I think it can be trying also when there is someone who's coming in and that maybe they don't have the full perspective of what you're looking at, of the situation, if they don't have the clinical eye to look and see what is going on, to then feel like they are somehow influencing or swaying a situation without kind of the full understanding. But that's also why I just talk and I counsel ad nauseum. And,
right.
and very transparent about everything that I'm thinking that is going on, that, to help, everybody in the room understand kind of where I'm coming from with, I think, the full kind of perspective of the situation of labor.
I think,
so that no one feels left out and no one feels like they don't understand.
Well, and I think that I hear you. I think besides ego, I think there's a time and a place. I mean, the doula can, if the options and choices haven't been given, then she is trying to help their client find their voice to ask for what are the options and choices, or helping them understand what they are. But in the end, she should not be influencing the decision-making process, because just like you said, as a doctor, it's their decision. It's once they have the information, I mean, then it's their decision. So if a doula is coming in and she's second guessing what the care provider is doing, I understand that to a certain degree, but there's a process, as you said, that has to be done in order to help that person make the right decision.
And I mean, something I still remember and I live by from what I learned from you 15 years ago in the doula training was that if mom is okay and baby is okay, you have all the time in the world.
Right.
There is no rush. There is no urgency to make a decision or to do anything other than just be. And so I think that's one of the crucial takeaways that, for the doulas that are there is that, if there is interventions that are being offered, to really the first question that they should encourage their families to ask is mama okay? Is baby okay? And if the answer to both of those questions is yes, you got time for a conversation,
right,
to ask as many questions and to really unpack kind of the overall scenario to have a greater understanding. And so I think that is, one of the key things is advocating for more transparency and more of a dialogue about things so that people feel like they are being informed of the choices, options.
Right. I think that's the bottom line. It's if it's an emergency, there isn't time to talk. I mean, if it's truly an emergency, and that everybody can understand, but if everybody is doing okay, but there's decisions that are being, or there are thoughts about decisions that need to be made or potentially need to be made, then yes, there should be a time allotted. I just read, I've read research where it does not matter how long a labor lasts. As long as the baby and the mom are doing okay, labor can last as long as it lasts. And I believe that's true. But I just was reading a study just yesterday, and I can't remember where it came from, which it's not from the U.S., it was another country, about they did a study. It was the wording of this conclusion that they were including glucose into a trial, putting glucose into the IV fluids and finding that it actually helped shorten labors, and in comparison to those that didn't have the glucose. That glucose itself could decrease the amount of time of labor. And it said specifically, because if labors go on too long, they become dangerous. And I thought, really? I didn't think that was true. I mean, yes, there's variables in there that could make it less healthy. But I thought, well, anyway, maybe that's a whole other discussion, Jodi. It was just the wording that bothered me, not the study. I had questions about that also, like, well, maybe they should be eating and drinking, and then they wouldn't need glucose in there, and maybe there isn't supposed to be a clock ticking.
Yeah, and that is probably just a throwaway statement that is an assumption.
Yeah. Right.
Certainly. But,
right.
The longer something occurs, the longer period of time, in general, bad things can happen. So
right.
I guess if you want to generalize it in that way.
But those things can be taken as verbatim, though, too, not as as a fact. Or is that something we call, what is it? What are those facts that are fiction? I can't think of
alternate truth.
Yeah, maybe it's an alternate truth. Just lastly, because I should let you go here, and I feel like I want to have another conversation with you about specific things in the future, and I hope you'll let me pick your brain at another time for everyone.
Absolutely.
Just real quickly, and I know that's really almost impossible, all of this work, did it inform you as your choices finally when you decided to have a baby? Did it inform you and influence you on decisions you made about your prenatal care and then your labor and birth? And then has being a parent changed you in any way as a provider?
Mm-hmm. All the above, yes.
Yeah.
So it definitely influenced my pregnancy, having gone through this path. And I think there is a certain amount of paranoia that you can build when you know too much. And after having spent 4 years seeing everything that could possibly go wrong in a pregnancy, and then to become pregnant, it's hard not to think of those things all the time about, what ifs that you have seen happen. And I was blessed with a completely normal and healthy pregnancy. And I chose midwifery care when I came in. And of course, I relocated in my third trimester to Vermont. So I was starting off, coming in, it was right around 26 weeks when I had my very first appointment with the midwives here. And, I had a midwife back in Delaware as well, but I knew, like, I am healthy. This is a normal pregnancy. I do not need an obstetrician. I need a midwife. And I was so grateful to have gone through midwifery care to see the different models. Because one of the interesting things is that, OBGYN residency doesn't necessarily teach you to take care of, normal, healthy pregnancies in women that don't have issues. You're just like, well, yeah, baby's heart rate is fine. You're measuring fine. Okay, carry on. See you in another few weeks. And so it was interesting to then go through the midwifery model and, poach many of the things and the handouts that they were giving. I was like, oh, this is great. Yeah, I'm totally going to start sharing this as well. Just for my own practice to have gone through
that's great.
That experience with the midwives. And then, of course, I did not go into labor, up until I worked until I was 41 and a half weeks because I just kept showing up to work. And every day people would see me and be like, you're still pregnant? And I was like, and then I eventually induced my own labor at home with an herbal cocktail, which worked wonderfully. And I had a very, very long labor of 43 hours.
Wow.
And it started at 9 p.m. on a Friday, and my baby was born at 3:54 p.m. on Sunday.
Wow.
So it brought me to a level of exhaustion that I had
never
been to before. I thought I had been through, every level of exhaustion that one could experience until that. And the process of my own labor, was very much about me learning to let go of control. Because when you are in labor, you have none. And you just have to surrender to your body. And I do recall saying several times, I enjoy this so much more from the other side of things.
Yeah. I'm sorry to laugh, but I can imagine. Yes.
And eventually I got to a point where I did need Pitocin. I knew it. I was like, and I will need Pitocin. Yes. Pitocin, please now. Thank you. And and I had to do a lot of letting go, and I eventually asked for an epidural, and it was something that I had never wanted to do, but I asked inside, and I felt like this is what I need for me, and that was after 24 hours of labor and being 3 centimeters. I was like, and I will need Pitocin and an epidural. Thank you, please. And I did a lot of crying, and I did a lot of processing, and I just like, yes, this is what I need to do for me, and I did it. And then, of course, there were some heart rate troubles overnight, which the nurses let me sleep through, thank goodness. And I didn't look at the monitor at all. And but inside, I knew my baby was fine. I knew she was fine. And then my cervix just wouldn't change despite the amount of Pitocin that I was on. I was just on a whiff. And finally, one of my partners was called in for a consult for a C-section. And it was so interesting because I had been on the other side of this scenario so many times of getting so close and feeling like, God, it needs to happen. Like, please, cervix, just go away. And so after talking with my partner, I said, well, here's what we're going to do. It's like, I'm going to sit straight up. You're going to increase the Pitocin, and either her heart rate will tolerate it or it won't. And we're just going to do this until we don't. And my partner's like, well, how long do you want to do it for? It's like, as long as it takes. And she said, I'll come back in an hour. And she came back in an hour, and she said, okay, do you want to be checked? I said, well, you can check me, but if her heart rate is fine, I'm going to ask for more time. And then she came back another hour later, and then I had changed from, I had been, I think, 8 centimeters for 6 hours, and then I was 9 centimeters. So I was like, all right. And then I pushed through my 9 centimeter cervix, which I would not advocate. No one else do that. But I did, I did it. And then she came out from below, which felt like such a come from behind victory in so many ways. But those 2 hours where I was sitting up and they were increasing Pitocin, I did so much crying and so much letting go. Because I was so committed to having a vaginal birth and had really longed to have an unmedicated birth, which at that point had not happened, but I was fine with that. And then just knowing that it was a very real possibility that I would need to have a C-section, and I grieved and I processed. And then by the time I, was checked, I had come to peace that a C-section was likely the course of action. And then by the grace of something higher than myself, I was able to push her out, and it was magic. And there was nothing like, having your own baby, and it has given me so much more compassion for the moms that I work with in a way that, a million years of schooling never could, until you go through it yourself, and then you see somebody where they're at, and you remember where you were at in that process, and you feel that in you, and you just have so much more compassion for where people are in labor and how they labor. And, one of the, I think, most interesting takeaway points for me was my husband's perspective at the end of it, because he was going through it right there with me. And it had never occurred to me before to really process with the dads, because I was just so fixated on the moms and what their experience were. And in so many ways now, I think it is so much harder for the support people, but especially, the partner of the woman going through it, because you are a helpless kind of bystander to the process. The woman is going through it, like it is, they're in it, but the partner is just an observer, and how difficult that is to, from what my husband said, just to, be pouring so much love and energy into me, and then feel so helpless on the other side of it, helpless that, my cervix wasn't changing, that I might need surgery, that, something could happen with the baby, that the baby could somehow be compromised, and how scary that is. And I think that is can be a tremendous role for the doula.
Yes.
Is also supporting
Yes.
the co-parent, because the woman is in it, but the partner is just watching it all go down, and how scary that can be from another perspective.
Right. Well, it sounds amazing, and I'm listening deeply to your story of that letting go, that acceptance, that not letting go, the grief, the letting go, all of that, and how hard that is, especially if you have, I know, having worked with lots of doulas, through nurses, through midwives, through doctors, births, how hard it is for the brain to shut off. What you said, you already know all the things during your pregnancy, during, what could go wrong, and, those kinds of things, and not being able to turn that off entirely, because that's just who you are now. For you to have that, and also then to reconcile, though, that this is your body and your body's doing this, and then trusting, though, the people around you, also your care providers, to help you through this experience, but still being in charge. And I think you were still in charge, not because you were an obstetrician, but because you were Jodi, having a baby, and you were trusting your intuition. You said you knew your baby was okay, and you reconciled each step of the way what could or couldn't happen. And I think, letting go, so many people have had to let go of that they're going to get the unmedicated birth. And then the next option they hope is, to preserve the vaginal delivery, which is what I hear you were really working diligently at doing. And in the end, ultimately, that's what you were able to do. But also understanding there was that place where it could have come, where you would have known that also, no, I need this cesarean. And as hard as that would have been, you would have understood it, because also you were well informed and you were well supported through the experience. And a compassion level, I can only imagine, Jodi. I'm sure your compassion for your patients all along has been wonderful, but I do think it can enhance and enrich it when it does become your experience, though you were not a mother for all the years before, and you were doing a fabulous job. Just for all those people who will end up never having kids out of choice or circumstance, I think we can do this work with that love and compassion. But it certainly, I can see where, especially a very long labor like you had, is almost, it's almost like that's perfect, given that this is your field of work. And I wish I would have loved for you, so don't get me wrong, I would have loved for you the birth that just went kind of textbook or less than textbook, smooth and creamy and just and exhilarating. But there are times and places that helps us have experiences that enrich our understandings as well.
I had very much been putting in 6 hours labor, 15 minutes of pushing. That's what I was putting into the universe.
Good.
It didn't come to fruition, but when it comes down to it, I would not change a single thing about it, because I really believe it's what I needed to go through to get to this place. And I think it has helped me to appreciate this sense of pliability. And I think that is and what I would kind of encourage some of the, the doula listeners to discuss with their clients is, I think it's wonderful to have birth intentions and to have a vision of how you want things to go. But then pliability is key, because you can plan for any day of your life, and sometimes things comes up and plans change.
Yep.
But so intentions are great, but then having the pliability to, when confronted with the actual scenario when, a patient who has never had labor before all of a sudden is in labor and is not what they thought it was going to be, is that it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to readjust your plan of what you wanted to have, given, the new set of circumstances that you're facing. And it doesn't mean that you somehow failed or that it was, less than because it deviated from what you thought it might be.
Right.
But that it's, you being pliable and open, which is then, the lesson for the next phase, which is eternally more difficult, which is then raising another human being.
That's it. Well, that's what I always say, that the whole purpose of pregnancy, labor, and birth that we seem to forget is to raise a child. It's like that. I mean, so yes, the exhaustion that you described, I'm sure you have had something very similar to it in your parenting over these months and months of having this little one. I mean, yeah, and the challenges and the struggles, and if not now, they come. We can't avoid them. They come. Just we can't have this life with a child without having struggles and challenges. Even we pray for the small ones, the ones that will not put us over the edge, but they're going to happen. Period. So, and I think that is what you understand. What I think we want other care providers to understand, that is why we want to have the opportunity to birth in ways that keep us very actively participating, because it's helping us become a parent for the future. So, well, Jodi, I cannot thank you enough for taking this time to share your story. I so appreciate the fact that you, period, have just done this, have where you started, how your journey played out, and that you are doing this work. It's really wonderful for me to know, and I'm sure so many others, both here listening and those around you, to know that you're out there and that you represent many of the care providers out there, whether they had a doula in their background of experience or not, that, I know there are good care providers out there. We believe in those good care providers, and we want to help them thrive. So we're there with you, helping you continue to do the work that you're doing wholeheartedly.
Well, thank you so much. I feel so grateful to be able to do the work that I'm doing. It is such an honor to play this role in the lives of women and families. I feel so blessed to have, after all of the years of working towards this goal, now be, living in it. And I also want to thank you specifically for the role that you have played on my journey, and that we have, met throughout this journey. We started and you were with me in the very, very beginning, and then you reappeared right before I went to medical school, and then you reappeared in residency. And things that you have taught me have stayed with me and have resonated with me. And your words come out of my mouth still when I am counseling patients.
I hope it's not my curse words. Sorry.
But many of the phrases and the terminology that you use, longer, stronger, closer together, oh my God, I throw that out multiple times a day. But you have certainly, in no uncertain terms, helped me to become the physician that I am. And for that, I am so grateful for you.
Well, thank you, Jodi, for just the little part of meeting you. That's awesome and wonderful. So we will hopefully talk to you again in the future. We'll talk about specifics of labor and birth, perhaps. It's always wonderful to have that medical perspective coming right from somebody who is actually practicing, like your input. So thank you, and you take care of yourself. Give your family big hugs, and stay warm there in Vermont.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Thérèse.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Wow, that was really great. I really appreciate my conversation with Jodi. She is such a wonderful person. I do have the privilege of knowing who she is, and always her compassion and her care and her ability to listen and see has astounded me. So I felt really privileged to be able to have this conversation and share it with all of you. I'm hoping that Jodi will come back again in the future and we can go over some specifics about labor and birth for all of you. I think she would be an ideal person to have a conversation about all the different interventions. So if you are interested in asking her specific questions, please send us an email at ToRAISEQuestions@gmail.com. And, these will be specifically to ask a care provider such as her to see what whatever your questions, the questions you've wanted to ask a doctor before, put them out there and we'll try and get as many of those questions answered by Jodi in the near future. So everyone take care, stay warm wherever you are during this winter time, and let's all practice doing a lot of compassionate care, not only to ourselves, but to each individual that we encounter. We need it right now in this world, probably more than we ever have before, and there's nothing like the present moment. So thanks, everyone. We'll be talking again in the near future.